Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines released 20 years ago this year, that year of course being 2004, in the year of Our Lady Lilith, and it had two release dates, the first of which was in the US on November the 16th, 2004, and the second one was in Europe on November the 19th, 2004. And being one of the finest examples of Vampire the Masquerade YouTube content creators, I thought it would be a pretty poggers thing to do two celebratory things to mark this monumental occasion, where one of these days we'd have a fun Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines Let's Play on the Lore by Night YouTube channel, and another one being an actual play. And for those who have no idea what that is, we basically get a bunch of nerds together and play the TTRPG tabletop role-playing game that Bloodlines was based off of, that of course being Vampire the Masquerade. So how exactly do I plan about doing this? Well, the Let's Play element of this is really fucking simple. I record myself playing the game and I provide witty commentary and banter all the way through, but we're not going to be focusing on that. We're going to be focusing primarily on the actual play, hence the title of the fucking video. Now, the first part of that, as the games master or storyteller, if we use the Vampire the Masquerade / World of Darkness term for it, we have to decide the setting, and of course the system that we're going to be using. Now, the setting is really obvious. It's going to be centered around LA, round about the time that Bloodlines is wrapping up or just afterwards, because I think it would be more interesting to have the players have their own mark within the Bloodlines universe, as it were. Obviously not official, not canon material, but with Bloodlines, all the cool, interesting stuff happening, I don't want the players to feel that they are missing out on something cooler and more interesting, so we're going to give them their own story completely detached from what's going on, although the event of Bloodlines is going to affect on what's happening all the same, if you know what I mean. Now, regarding doing research for the setting, as any good storyteller would do, it's going to come from basically three different sources. The first of which is going to be basically discovering what it was like in Los Angeles in 2004, and I'm not prepared to go out there and do actual research that way. I have to rely on a lot of things online and YouTube videos, and I have a friend who's lived there for most of their life, so I can go and poke them with 101 different fucking questions. The next bit is by paying attention to Bloodlines a bit more and like absorb the setting and the characters and whatnot, but I feel fairly confident in that bit, so I just need a bit of a reminder. And the third bit is actually talking about the actual setting of LA within the World of Darkness, because of course LA by Night is an actual source book you could obtain for your games of Vampire the Masquerade, and in fact I'm going to move that over here because it will look a bit better here. Now this is the Cities of Darkness compilation book, I guess. In here we have two books, Burning by Night, which is fucking disgusting, and then we have Los Angeles by Night, which is in fact a very lovely book indeed. Lovely stuff. Now, this will help me about trying to find the different characters, the settings and the statistics and whatnot. For example, Smiling Jack is in this book, kitted out with a load of statistics that I could use when porting it over to the actual system of Vampire the Masquerade that we'll be using. And also help me to get a bit more of an understanding about who rules the different aspects of LA, because the different sections of it are divided up into baronies. It's an actual reason that the Anarch sect, the faction as you would of vampires, the leader's called a baron, because it all stems from the Anarch revolt in the free states of America, or as free as actual America would allow it to be. Of course, there's also the system that we need to consider, and most people would be expecting me to use Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, because that's what all the cool TTRPG content creators are using these days, or at least those that are interested in the World of Darkness, and I've never been one to fall in with the cool kids, so we're not going to be doing that. Jokes aside, the main reason why we're not going to be using 5th edition is because Bloodlines, as I said already, was released in 2004, and that was used in the revised edition's meta plot, or 3rd edition if you want to get real annoying with it, and that was basically building up to a whole end of the world scenario where all of its different splats, its universes, werewolf, raven, mage, changeling, etc., basically had their own end of the world scenario, and they were all killed off originally before they'll be rebooted in the 20th anniversary edition line, which was meant to be setting agnostic, so it's basically there if individual apocalypse scenarios have not happened. And to that end, if it's not fucking obvious by now, I'll be using Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition to be running this game. I don't have Revised Edition, and this will be the closest thing to that, so when I'm referring to character stats in LA by Night, such as Smiling Jack, if that's something they wanted to do, or in fact any of the characters that are in there, I won't have to do that much fiddling around to get it all to fit nicely within this book. And to be quite frank, I really like V20. I did a review of that some time ago, which you can go and check out in a card. I also did a review on Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition, which you can also see in a card up there. And I've got no beef with Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition as its core rules presented within that core book. There's some things I don't like for sure, as I do with V20, but, you know, it's just the system that makes more sense to me, and rather than doing extra legwork, we're just going to keep things fairly simple in a very simple game. Lovely stuff! And now we also need to talk about some modifications to character creation, which may have got some of you a little bit interested. Or more interested, I hope, is why you're here. This is obviously going to be centered around a group, a pack, gang of Anarchs, because Los Angeles in Vampire the Masquerade world is controlled by the Anarchs, and it's confirmed in Beckett Jahard's diary, and then later the actual play series LA by Night, which is supposedly canon all the way through, was liberated by the Anarchs and the Camarilla was kicked out, which is fantastic really, because it doesn't really make much sense for anything else to have occurred. But I'm not going to be paying much attention to the actual meta plot of LA by Night, partly because none of that's happened yet, and mostly because I don't give a flying fuck what goes on there. It's what's important here is what my players get up to, and it makes more sense for the players to have the most fun as Anarchs here, so that's what we're going to be sticking with. Now, I could use the standard character creation process from V20, but the Anarchs actually have a slightly altered character creation process, not in V20, but in a revised book, which I think is pretty neat indeed. Now, the book in question is, of course, the Guide to the Anarchs, which I reviewed alongside the Guide to the Camarilla and the Sabbat, all of which are going to be appearing in cards right now. And this actually has a lot of interesting information about role-playing the Anarchs and more on their history and how more of like the Anarch Revolt happened and what would happen thereafter regarding the invasion of the Kuei Jin, or the Wong Kuei, and if you've played Bloodlines, you know exactly who they are. Now, the character creation is slightly altered here in that the Anarchs and their physical, like the main attributes, I believe they're a little bit weaker. You can actually see them appear on the screen now as I'm waffling through here. But they have more disciplines to play with, so it's like that weird hybrid between like weaker, younger vampire fledgling sort of thing. But they have a bit more access to their vampiric side. They're not quite like upholding the Masquerade as much as the Camarilla are, but they're more accepting of their vampiric nature as a result, which gets this very weird hybrid thing. And I need to go through this to make sure there aren't any like background restrictions as well, but I may impose some as well if I feel that it is important to the setting here. So we have a whole collection of books here that we're going to be working with. We have a revised edition tome, so we can really get into that setting a lot more, which is a bloody fantastic resource that we have. We have a second edition book, I believe LA by Night is. I'll fact check myself below if that's incorrect. And then we have 20th Anniversary Edition for the actual main rules. So we're combining all these editions and these systems together to create a cohesive Vampire the Masquerade LA by Night Bloodlines experience, which I think hopefully is going to go really well. Just to gloat a little bit, I don't actually have any worries regarding my storytelling abilities, like whatever scenario that I come up with. Like, I've run countless of games of all sorts of people, new and old, digital, and in face I have run a actual play on the World of Darkness Twitch channel, I have done actual plays on my own channel, and I've even run games with authors of Vampire the Masquerade, so I have no doubt that I can deliver a very fucking good Vampire the Masquerade TTRPG experience. But and I also need to give some consideration of what I'm actually going to be doing for everybody here, the players being members of the Lore by Night Discord server, which I'll get on to later. But it's actually the actual play element of this that's going to be a bit difficult, because previously I've done things in podcast form, i.e. there's no real visual element, you just put on some headphones and you just sit back and enjoy. But for various reasons I've talked about before, which are going to appear in a card right now, I'm not doing that, and I want to explore more video elements with this exclusive event, as it were. I'm not doing this full time. I've talked about why I don't like doing actual plays long form. Basically, it's just a load of fucking unnecessary stretch. But I do want to do this for this Bloodlines event, and I do want to make it stand out and make it look absolutely fantastic, or at least as fantastic as my patience will allow. Now, I have ideas how I want to go about doing this, but before I get carried away with all those technical recording and editing shenanigans, I actually have to consider the actual game itself, like who are they going to meet, what's actually going to be happening, any combat encounters, any social encounters, which there are going to be quite a lot of them, because Vampire the Masquerade, like Bloodlines, is a very social heavy game filled with lots of politics, like who and what they're going to meet, which classic Bloodlines characters am I going to pull in for them to interact with, like do I bring in Jeanette or Therese Vorman, do I bring in fucking Nines, like do I bring in Smiling Jack, like there's so much things I have to consider here, because partly because it's a themed game with some actual players, but also as I'm putting this out for people to watch and to be entertained by, i.e. an audience, I do have to basically cater to those fans and an audience basically, and give them what they want. Not everything for sure, but there is a degree of extra work and consideration I have to put into putting in an actual play rather than just a self-contained game and experience, which is something that anybody who wants to run an actual play is going to have to consider. Not just because you're doing a setting thing, but like any sort of game that you're running, like you don't just run them the same way that you would do at home. I don't care what anybody says, even though my experiences are fairly similar, there are certain things that I do privately that I do not do publicly, and vice versa. And that's not just talking about language and whatnot. I just notice that the different like social cues and how I interact with people, I don't have to play up things as much as when in a private game. In an actual play, I found myself doing more voices and over-the-top mannerisms when compared to private stuff. I don't do that as much. I enjoy doing stupid voices for sure, as anybody who's watched any of my content can tell you, but it's not something that I do all the time. But you know, just little things there, and it's something that I want people to take away from all of this. Like, obviously take what you need from this and apply it to any sort of actual play that you need to, including the tech that I'm going to be using. But there are significant additional steps you have to put in when putting on an actual play. So now that I've scared off anybody that doesn't want to do an actual play anymore, we're now going to focus on what exactly I came up with and what my players are going to be doing in this game. Now, if you've watched the actual play first, you'll know what exactly that I've planned, but if you want to find out what goes behind the curtain, so to speak, stick around and find out. If, however, you found this before the actual play and you don't want spoilers, this is your polite warning to fuck off and go and watch the actual play first, then come back here. Otherwise, you're going to fail your self-control roll and go in a mad frenzy because you've upset yourself. And for anyone and anyone else who doesn't give a flying fuck about anything I've just said in this little warning, let's see what I came up with. So I've given some thought to the overall plot of Bloodlines and how it ends and all those different bits and pieces of narrative, and there are two things that stuck out to me that I don't think were ever properly addressed in future books, and neither were certainly addressed in the actual play, because why would they? 5th edition doesn't like lore, doesn't like At the Lore the games as well. Anyway, it's the fact that first of all, you've got the whole thing with the Guru, the Lupine, how in the Anarch ending alliance thing, Nines kills a werewolf, like rips off his head sort of thing, which is going to piss some people off, I think. And given the whole Griffith Fires thing, which is like a plot point that runs through the LA by Night source book, I think that would be enough to get the Guru fucking coming down on the vampires. You know, all in the name of Gaia, delivering some whoop-ass from Gaia. But another more interesting one, I think, is regarding the Giovanni. As you may recall, part of the main quest is that the vampire character, they go to this Giovanni mansion to liberate the Arcaran sarcophagus, which is in the safekeeping of their crypt, because they are aligned with the Quasian. Now, obviously, if the Giovanni were to find out who this mysterious vampire was and who they were aligned with, or rather what happened in the city, one could make assumptions there that, oh, this is an operation done by the Anarchs, let's go and kick them back. And I think having those two cross over, Guru and Lupine, to use a vampire term for werewolf, or Guru, which is their word for it, the werewolves I mean, we could get some very interesting results. Now, I don't think having this as like a standard, oh, go and deal with this sort of thing from a baron or whatever. No, I don't think just presenting it like that will be all that interesting. Because remember, we're talking about a bunch of punky anarchs that want to go and get shit done. They've got to feel like they're on top and powerful, and when they encounter the Giovanni, there's going to be a bit of a resistance because none of them can deal with ghosts for the most part, but they're vampires and they know how to deal with them. However, when the Gurus show up, no one is going to be able to deal with them, so it's stripping away that bit of power. So I think a way to start this is by having the players thrown straight into the action, like they're chasing a bunch of Camarilla neonates or fledglings, like just throw them right into the fucking action, like a little role play there, you know, just enough to get people situated and, you know, comfortable and whatever. Then as they're dealing with the Camarilla fledglings, like wrapping things up, they are interrupted by the Giovanni and there's some clues left behind on where they need to go, and they're ambushed along the way. Then there's a bit of a fight thing at the Giovanni mansion or whatever I decide to do, and as things are beginning to wrap up there, BAM! The Guru come in on stage, fuck things up, and if the players are wise, they'll get the fuck out of there. And introducing a chase sequence where the Guru are chasing the players, because all the way through this, it'll be the players chasing the vampires and their enemies and like fucking shit up. But right at the end, it's going to be the other way around. And I expect one or two individuals to die here. But if they die, they fucking die. But that's just kind of what I'm thinking at the moment. And how I'm presenting the information to you right now is kind of how I go about thinking about my plots these days. When I started, and particularly when I did the first vlog I did of this nature, which was also a vampire one-shot, I used to write things down and make little notes here and there. But in that year and a bit, I do a lot more talking to myself out loud on gorgeous days like this, and rainy days, because this is England after all, innit? And just moments when I'm alone, I just think aloud to myself and talk things through, because sure, you think of things up here, all fine and dandy, but I've often find that when it then leaves the mouth, or in previously written down, it feels different, you know, it sounds different, and you approach things differently to how you think, to how you say, to how you write. And sure, even when I was writing down lots of notes and things, I also spoke to myself on occasion. I speak to myself a lot, actually. It's a call an autism quirk, as it were. But I tend to like voice things a lot more now, like when I did my Chicago by Night campaign with my friends, or anything really. I just voice things and just like play things out in my head and out loud. And when I'm alone like this, what I will actually do is voice some particular interactions. Like, I haven't thought of anything specific with this so far, but when I get some of the more key players down, whether I'm going to be using the cast and Bloodlines, the Giovanni there, or I'm going to be having a completely different set of Giovanni, I'll like voice interactions with them and try and work out what my players are going to do, because hopefully, if they're smart, they won't rush into the Giovanni all guns a-blazing, but then again, they may well do, and my planning may go down the absolutely boggy shitter. But if it does, it does. Like, it's not my story, it's theirs. I can only plan for so much, and I tend to embrace the chaos where it goes anyway. So that's kind of really it, really. So just to recap, the players are chasing after some Camarilla fledglings. The players have the upper hand, so let's say that we have 5 players. We have 3 fledglings. We always got to make sure that that's balanced in that sense, so they feel that they're the ones on top. They are interrupted by the Giovanni. They do a bit of investigation. They go and fight the Giovanni, and then they go and run away from the Guru. And when they get to safety, that's when the session ends. Of course, if the story beats change, or I add or take bits in, you'll see them in the actual play itself. But if anything like really inspiring grabs me, I'll try and throw it into a little part of this vlog, because, as I said, I haven't done any of this yet. You'll see as I'm coming up with the idea. But besides that, I need to think about how I'm going to get players to make their characters, because I'm going to do something I don't usually do, and have everybody meet together one day, separate from the main game, to make their characters and talk about how their gang met, and all that like personal customization stuff. So when it comes to the game night itself, and the actual play, it will be as immersive as humanly possible. And to that end, I need to address how I want them to make their characters, because we're using a slightly altered character creation process here. Now I could provide it in text form. Well, I'm going to provide it in text form, but like, not just write it out in Discord or whatever, but I'll have to make them a little handout, I think, just to make it look a bit nicer rather than just giving that screenshot I showed you a lot earlier on, you know, just to make it like nice and purdy. And I also enjoy doing the handouts like that as well, and you know, make it look official, or as official as my patience will allow, combining like V20 and revised edition art, you know, just so it feels authentic, like, you know, stuff like that, just to make it a bit more immersive, and also let people know that I care about what I'm doing a lot more. Make sure that they read them and have them all follow through with that. Yeah, this should all be a lot of fun. I also have to take consideration which clans are available and which ones aren't, which if you have no idea why I'd want to do something like that, we'll find out in the next part of this vlog. So I'll head back to the Lore by Night Haven and I'll start working on that. Come on, Emma. Despite being one of the simpler handouts that I've done, this oddly enough had the most challenges and little hurdles to overcome, mostly in what I actually had to present to people, but also the actual presentation of itself, which might confuse anybody who is familiar with the V20 and the revised edition layout. It's just a frame with some simple text in and around it. What could possibly be difficult with any of that? Well, the first thing that we need to do is acquire a border from a revised edition book so it creates that more authentic feel from the get-go, or, to use the other name for it, 3rd edition, which is the name that's presented on the Storyteller's Vault, which is where you can purchase World of Darkness books, print on demand and PDF, but you can also use it to publish your own homebrew for any World of Darkness setting, be it vampire, mage, werewolf, etc. and so forth, and you can use these templates and a variety of art packs to really sell your product as an official product, or at least make it look as official as possible, which I think is pretty fucking neat. Now, as I said already, we're going to be focusing on the 3rd edition template, which has this border, and it also has a variety of texts that you can download and use within your own products. Now, there was only one particular text format I was interested in, and that's the one that's going to be displayed on screen now. Now, this is the font used in the variety of different subheadings within a revised edition or 3rd edition source book, and of course the core book in question. So we can already begin to plot things out and make things official, or at least look official as possible. However, the first hurdle actually came in the form of the border itself, because a lot of these borders in these templates are presented as PNGs, or a JPEG or other image file that we can just copy and paste over. Not this one. This was a .eps file, and I'm not entirely too sure what that means, and I'll present that on screen for you now. And we need to convert that into a PNG, which is a high non-compressed image format, which basically means we can have the full fat image in its full quality there. And the reason why I'm making this conversion from EPS to PNG is because Canva, which is what I'm using to create these little handouts, won't accept the EPS files, so we need to convert this into an image format that it would understand and recognize. Now, Canva is free to use, and I like that it presents quite a lot to its users for free, but a lot of its features are locked off for premium users, like uploading original fonts and whatnot. So if that's something that you're going to use, do keep that in mind. I'm also going to be honest and transparent and say that Canva is like dipping its toes more into generative AI, which I don't use for any of my stuff, but I know just that alone will just stop people from using it. But I just wanted to make that clear to you all before you make that plunge financially. So now that we've converted this board of a revised edition into a PNG, we can just create an A4 document and start working away at it, which is what I would be saying if that was actually what I fucking did. Because you see, the border for this revised edition template, I guess, is not A4 size. A4 size actually uses the following measurements that you're seeing on screen, and the border is actually these measurements. And I don't know how good your collective mental maths is, but the border is significantly smaller than A4 size, which means that if we try and make it a full background, it's going to look something like this. And when we present that to people to read, if it doesn't look weird as in its presentation already, everything's just going to look really blurry. And by looking blurry or pixelated or all digitized, it's going to look a bit shit. And we don't want things to look shit, we want things to look as professional as possible. And if I wanted people to look at fucking garbage, I'd make them look at Victoria Ash from Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song. disgusting, mate! Now, the fix for this is really simple. We just simply go onto Canva or whatever software that you're wanting to use to create your own supplements or handouts or whatever. You put in the exact measurements that you want, upload the image, set it to background, and Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. We have now produced something that fits nicely, that isn't going to appear all pixelated for your friends and family or whatever you're going to be using and handing out to people. In this case, it's going to be a bunch of random fuckos from my Discord server who I love very, very much. Now, the first thing that I'm going to be doing is trying to find the different fonts I'm going to be using and slapping on the revised Anarch logo on the back, make it look a bit transparent, so kind of like a watermark sort of thing, emulating some of those older designs. Also, it reminds me a little bit of some of the character sheets that Mr. Gom did when I was doing this, so I was kind of trying to emulate that as well. Again, trying to make things look as fairly professional as possible. Now, we're using a mixture of two fonts. We're using like the V20 font, but it was actually used in 2nd edition first, the actual name of which is going to appear here, and we're using that revised font as well. Now, I did try experimenting it as having the revised edition subheading and then something else entirely different just to make it stand out, but then I decided to go against that idea and just use the revised art for both the subheadings and the actual bodies of text, because they're both pretty readable still. I just had to adjust the sizes on all of them to get things into place. Now, there's a lot of fiddling with the information, like copying things over from the revised guide to the Anarchs and from V20 as well, and a lot of it was me just trying to make sure what was too much or was too little, so I wasn't trying to overwhelm my players here, but also trying to present them with enough information that they're not trying to scour the book for lots of information. For example, it's not immediately obvious that when you're assigning your blood pool, you don't just roll the 1d10 to decide. What you also do is that you add your dots in domain, providing you've put any dots in that, to that roll as well, which is something that I think I missed in my original character creation guide for V20 all those many years ago, which you can check out in the card that's going to appear on the video now. So it's just little things like that, because I feel there's going to be people who want to play Vampire with me who haven't played V20 before, but they're just going to leap at the opportunity to play this Vampire game and appear in actual play and all those other little bits of excitement, and may not be all that familiar with V20. So this is actually why I'm doing this. It provides me to explain far too much when we're all sitting there together making the characters. I can just answer in-game questions and then just give them this handout to read and refer to. Now, obviously, they are going to be like flipping through the book and trying to find bits of information they need, like merits and flaws and clans and whatnot. And as I start to wrap things up, I needed to go through and check different rules and whatnot to make sure that I hadn't missed anything out. And something that occurred to me that I don't think anybody is going to do, but I wanted to cover base just in case, is that generation thing. Not everybody would want to be generation 13. There'd be a little bit of meta plot going on there, because if they wanted to embrace, they'd make a Finn blood, and nobody wants that. Keep the Finn blood thing in mind for just a second. So they may want to be a generation 12, and also may prevent other vampires using dominate on them. They're going to be assuming that everybody's going to be like a neonate, and I'm going to set things at a generation 13, which is like the standard for V20 character creation. So they may want that. They may want a bit of blood points as well to spend, just wanting to accommodate that, and just making sure that your blood port generation 12 is 11 and at generation 13 is at 10. Now, as I said with the Finn bloods, there may be some people who wanted to be a Finn blood in this, which in V20 and indeed other editions of Vampire, the Finn bloods weren't as organised as they appear to be in 5th edition. They don't have their own alchemy and blood sourcing and whatever. They don't all inherently share the same perks and flaws, merits and flaws I should say, that they do in 5th edition. That they actually have a lot worse going off for them. They're actually much more difficult to play, but somebody may want to give that a go for this, for which if they do, I take off my hat to you, because that's some real fucking ballsy energy. So I had to give the rules for, well, not the rules as such, but more making sure that people aware, if you want to be a Finbud, you've got to take this floor, and if you want to take a generation 14 or 15 floor, you go to this page of the book. But also in V20 there is the option for players to become a generation 16 Finnblood as well, via the last V20 sourcebook that was created, Beckett's Jihad Diary, which is quite frankly a fantastic source that anybody should go and purchase, whether they like the fiction, the lore, the metaplot, or they want a bunch of ideas to throw in their games. It is truly an amazing book. Lovely stuff! As you can see, it's quite a chunky tome. There's so much information in here, and stories and mechanics and story plots and whatnot. Just go and check my review of this. I actually did a much fuller review of this way back when. But yeah, just mwah! gorgeous! Something else that isn't immediately obvious, to the point where I actually forgot to include it in my little handout, so I can go back and edit in that at some point, is when talking about a kindred is hungry or not. Because in V5 you can clearly see when they're getting close to hunger, because their hunger is like rising up to 5, they enter 5 hunger, they then enter a frenzy. But with older editions of Vampire that's not quite the case. You have like the blood point pool, which is essentially, if I be really crude about it, Vampire the Masquerade's mana pool, but obviously there's a lot more significance to that than that. You still have frenzy and whatnot, but a kindred is considered hungry when their blood point is below 7 minus the kindred self-control or instinct, and they're both virtues that you assign to your character. You can go and check out the character creation guide for that, and that's only worth including because it will get people to think a bit more about, oh right, this is when I should start being hungry and perhaps modify my role playing to affect this a bit more. And it's hidden on a really fucking obscure page as well, or at least I think it's obscure anyway, because it took me forever to find it. As I'm recording this, I realised I forgot something, so there you fucking go. The last thing I want to talk about here is talking about the clans themselves and why I've just limited to the basic 7, and there are two main reasons for that. First of all, LA by Night actually mentions all these clans, like how the Brujar, the Gangra, and the Caitiff are the ones that are like the true representations of the Anarch movement as such, and then everybody else is considered a Camarilla clan, so there's a bit of social stigma there. Like, that's the main reason here. So just giving those options to players just makes it really simple. Okay, this is what you have to choose from. Don't give me a fucking Tzimisce or La Sombra. Yes, I'm aware that LA by Night, the sourcebook, does include an Anarch who's a pretty influential figure within the Free States here, but I'm not wanting to like do something of that nature here. Which leads me on to the second point, is that I don't want to say, okay, you can choose whatever you want to fucking be, and I have a new player who hasn't done Vampire before, who wants to be, I don't know, a Children of Osiris, and they get really het up with the very unique mechanics and the added layers of roleplay and the mechanics, and just fix and feel a bit overwhelmed on top of the stresses and all those bits and pieces of like doing an actual play, me hitting the record button, performing under camera, so to speak. And I'm also wanting to perform this in front of the Lore by Night Discord server as well, as like a little treat thing for us. So there's going to be all those added pressures, and I don't want that to get into the way of them trying to come up with a new way of understanding Vampire and roleplaying on top of all those other social pressures. And I'm not going to lie, I've had some experiences fairly recently as of the recording of this, where players have made choices where they've pushed themselves a bit too much and they haven't liked the result, and it's been too far late into a game to do anything about it. And I feel I get some of the blame for that, even though I give them fair warning, etc. and so forth. So by presenting them the basic 7, which everybody is familiar with, everybody knows how they work to an extent, because we're all at different levels here, of course, that people can choose something that they feel most comfortable with without experimenting too much and it them falling back on their ass later on. So it's a bit of both of what's considered like acceptable within the canon and the meta plot, even though there are like varying examples elsewhere, of course there are. But you also don't have people that are trying to push themselves, trying to make that super unique character and have the spotlight on them all the time. And if they can't deal with it, then fall back on their arse and basically not have a fun time. So I want to make sure that everybody's happy, and who's not going to have fun with the basic 7? I mean, they've existed since the very beginning, and there's something to like with all of them except the Ventrue, because fuck the Ventrue. Now we need to have a look a bit more about the setting within Bloodlines, because if we just use the map that's available to the player in that game, it doesn't take a genius to work out that everything in there is just a little bit squashed, and it makes everything look within LA really fucking tiny. Yes, technically it is because it was a rushed PC game, but the actual LA here, which is what I'm going to be basing the actual play on, you know, the actual LA by Night, we need to use a bit more reliable information here. Roughly guess where things are. So we're starting with the Giovanni Mansion, which is where like the big climactic fight, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, is going to be taking place. We have a look at the map that's presented in the geography chapter within LA by Night right here. We can actually work out that the Giovanni Mansion is sitting roughly within Van Nuys, or Nuys, however that's pronounced. I'm very sorry for anybody I'm offending here. And that is sitting within the barony of the San Fernando Valley. And if anybody knows anything about LA will know this is actually the valley, you know, the one that Victor Temple inherits in the LA by Night actual play, which is, from my perspective, totally coincidental, and it'd be a very interesting little Easter egg for anybody who knows and can work that out for themselves, or or shares that with the group or whatever, or asks about it, which I'm sure many people do. I think it's a little cool touch there. We have like this double whammy of like new and old LA by Night content, as it were. Now, obviously, a lot of my research is going to be focusing more on the San Fernando Valley from information that's presented in LA by Night and whatever information I can find online. There's also the point of where the characters are actually going to be based, like where their little pack or gang's going to be trolling and where presumably their havens are, and which basically narrows it down to one of three places. It's either going to be Santa Monica, downtown, or Hollywood, or could be really spicy and throw in Chinatown as well, but given the whole, Quasian thing going on over there, that's going to be highly unlikely. But I was thinking it through, and part of me was thinking, okay, let the players decide where they're going to be situated. But I decided to not let them do that, because I was trying to think what would capture the essence of Bloodlines more. Like, when people think of Bloodlines, what's the most iconic place within the game? And in my totally biased opinion, I actually think it's Santa Monica. Just for the game, it's the most polished of the game for one thing, and it will present the most, I feel, authentic Bloodlines experience, like some of the most memorable areas within that game. And also, I think there'll be players who'd want to go to the asylum and do the signature dance, which also helps me work out some of the characters that would be there. Obviously, the most infamous of which are the Vorman twins, and will be able to give my little twist on things. Okay, which of those quest lines did the vampire character choose? Like, did they save Jeanette, did they save Therese, or did they save them both? I've interpreted it from LA by Night that they've saved both, and I like that idea, so that's what I'm going to be going with. But I think it'll be more interesting that if they go and seek one of the Vorman twins for information, hey, we've just been jumped, what the fuck's all this about? I think it'll be more interesting to present that from Jeanette. I can't believe I got them the wrong way around. Or I could do a fucking coin flip on the idea. I actually quite like that idea a lot. I'll let that decide on a coin flip, and depending on which side we get is the kindred they're going to be meeting. I think that'd be a quite neat idea, actually. So yeah, just making shit like on the fly, it's pretty neat. I had decided actually that I'm going to include Smiling Jack in there somehow as well. Like, if I feel the players are struggling like really badly with the wealth, I'm going to have him show up with a bunch of vampires to save them their asses. And I think that'd be quite a fun interaction as well, and I think I could portray him fairly well. I'm obviously not going to like capture 100% the original, but yeah, I think I'll make people happy with that inclusion, presuming that he ends up in there at all, which is all lovely stuff. Now I need to work out a means of like getting people on board with this idea beyond, oh, you're doing a vampire game with Lore by Night. I mean, like, we're going to be putting together some form of form where people can sign and agree, okay, you're signing this form, you're green, you're going to have all these different bits and pieces available and all these other things, and we're going to talk about that right now. So this Google Forms doc is essentially serving as a casting call card sort of thing to, like, you would expect actors to go and follow for like films, TV, whatever. I don't know how it works, but you know what I mean when I say a casting call. And it's kind of that similar sort of vibe that we have here with actual plays. Like, you, the production, in this case me, are looking for actors and performers to partake in this show, which in this case is this Bloodlines 2 actual play. And even if they're not actors themselves, they're still having to put on some sort of show. It's being recorded up online in a media format for people to go and watch at their own leisure on demand. And unlike most studios, I'm not going to be taking it down if it doesn't do very well. I'll just cry and moan about it on YouTube a few months later. But that aside, like, even though they're not actors themselves, they are still like representing yours truly and the standard that I have, which is admittedly quite low because I tend to cut corners with these things and I don't care too much of the overall production of things, but I'm wanting to make things a bit more fancy in its presentation for this. And regarding behaviour and whatnot, I just don't allow any of the isms, racism, fascism, transphobia and all that other stuff. Basically, just don't be a cunt, and if you can't do that, you can fuck right off. Like, and I'm sorry if that offends any of you here who doesn't like any of that, but go fuck yourself. You're going to be offended a lot more if you stick around, because we've got pronouns and all that fun stuff that really makes the fucking neckbeards tickle, he says, tickling his beard almost down to his neck. Anyway, we're going to quickly move away from that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the personalization of this Google Form doc header, which with Google Forms you can upload a little header using some specific measurements for your image, or at least some recommended sizes, and it also dictates some of the colour schemes for the forms, and it also makes people a bit more excited because it's going to be the first thing they see alongside the title that gives the idea of what this is going to be. that and alongside the title, and that is my snoring dog Holly down there. So regarding this header, we're going to be using Canva again, or at least I'm going to be using Canva again to create this masterpiece. And obviously you're going to be using whatever software you use to edit your images and whatnot and all that fun stuff. I'm going to put in the little measurements there, and as I'm putting them in here, I was stunned for just a moment when I noticed that Canva now has meme templates, and it was a very how do you do fellow kids sort of moment for sure. It just made me laugh like, wow, they're people that are making meme templates using Canva. But anyway, then comes with the designing of the header itself, and it's kind of similar to designing thumbnails for YouTube. Now, a lot of the work was done for me here because I had already created the thumbnail for this actual play. It's one of the things I do first when I'm doing like any sort of YouTube thing. I create the thumbnail and it gets me all hyped and excited. And it can take as long as a few minutes or a few hours in some cases, even though the result doesn't seem all that complex. But what we have here is that we have some V5 marble, which you can get from like the V5 art pack from the Storyteller's Vault again. We have this artwork of Jeanette Vorman, which I was able to track down from like a box art of the game, and that doesn't sound too hard to do, but I wanted one of a specific size, so when I stretched it to fit the size of the thumbnail, it wasn't too blurry. There's going to be a bit of that anyway because it's like an old art and it's designed to look that sort of way. It does look a bit dirty and grungy. It's got a bit of age to it by design, but I didn't want it to be pixelated and like digitized looking, so it didn't look too shit. And I applied a little bit of a filter here so it blended a bit more with the reddish background here, which again, the marble on the V5 art pack is purple, this is red and black, so I've edited the color schemes here. We've got the Bloodlines logo there, and I've slapped a nice little 20th anniversary edition thing on top, which I thought was a lovely touch. We've got that revised font there as well, just to really seal off the package. Now this didn't take too long to do because, as I said, most of the stuff was there and it just involved moving bits of it around, and because I forgot to show what the actual final thing looked like within Canva, because you've got that template thing on the left hand side, this is what it looks like. As I said already, your mileage with this may vary. Like if you're an existing group and you've got all your artwork sorted and like designs, logos and different fonts that you use, this should take you really no time at all. It's just a matter of like moving things into place, as it were, as I described with my own just moments ago. But if you're starting out fresh, try and give some consideration about what it is that you're actually trying to put out. What do people want to think about both you and the thing that you're putting out? Like if you've got like some sort of I don't know, Regency era thing, I know that's quite popular at the moment. You may want like some high-end artwork, like things that look fancy with like nice decorative patterns or whatever, and like fancy handwritten fonts to reflect that. With the revised edition vampire stuff, I'm going for something that's one period to the revised edition setting, and also things that look a bit more grungy and, you know, ready sort of things, and using Bloodlines artwork for that. So it's just trying to create the impression so people know what sort of thing to expect. So yeah, just really consider what you're doing, and obviously you can refine things over time, but you know what they say, you don't get a second chance at a first impression sort of thing. So try and encapsulate what your particular brand is trying to put out there. And a lot of people won't like it that I'm referring to your little thing as a brand, like a company, but it kind of is, because people are going to have a look at what you're doing and expecting some level of professionalism, even if it's just like the very bare bones basic, like Zoom call with like a basic overlay around it. People will expect you to perform a certain way, and if you don't meet up to whatever standard that you're putting out there, then, well, you're not going to have people watching plenty of your shows. Now, again, this is not coming from somebody who does this stuff regularly, but I've done this enough and I've done YouTube enough to know that I have a standard when I put things out, like how I perform and record things. And sure, I get things wrong sometimes and I fuck up, and when that happens to you, because it probably will, you've just got to know how to deal with that like maturely and responsibly and move forward with these things. But yeah, there's a lot to the social element to actual plays as well that I don't think gets talked a lot much, and there could be a whole other conversation for this for sure, but we're not interested in all of that. We're going to get back to that little form that I've made. Again, I'm trying to set like a tone and a vibe, and I've got to make it very clear what I'm doing within the form about what the actual game in question is going to be. So I start off by writing about, you know, it's 20 years of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and this is a very special occasion for most vampire fans, myself included. And then I make it exciting. I'm inviting you lot to play in an actual play with me running it. I then present the premise, which is I've now decided it's actually going to be a few nights after the end of Bloodlines rather than on the night itself, because there's quite a lot happening on that first night, and I think that could be just too chaotic. But whether it's a few nights, there's still a lot going on, but enough to give some breathing space to the players so we can insert them and have their own story to tell effectively, kind of what I was saying earlier on in this vlog. And I don't give too much away because obviously I want to give some people some surprises to what's going on. Obviously you know what's going on because you've seen the actual play already, and you've listened to this vlog and you know the sort of thing I'm going to be doing, but I haven't really changed much other than that at the moment. And now I get into the more physical requirement elements of this. Now, I'm not pairing my speech up with the actual time lapse, so just trust me, it's all going to be there at some point or another. Now, the physical requirements I talk about here, this is where most of my high standards, and I say that apostrophe, sort of come into place here, because obviously I'm going to require people to show up for the session 0 and the actual play date itself, that you have to be here on these certain times, on these certain days, which as I'm writing this form in, I've just put X in because I haven't actually decided on the day yet as of the recording of this particular snippet here. But obviously when I have those dates I will mention it within this vlog, as I tend to do with these vlogs. But it's obviously very important that whoever is involved with this can be here on both those days, particularly the last one as it's the actual game day itself. And I actually put those two as questions at the very end. Will you be able to attend the session 0 on such day? Will you be able to attend the actual play? And I put yes, no, maybe there. Basically I want to weed out anybody who says no, so I'm not having my time wasted. Maybe these are the ones who can't quite make it, but I know who can make it if I don't get enough people that just say categorically yes, which is why I've put there, rather than being just a funny tit about it. Oh, and obviously we have to mention the rule set that we're using here. So as I've said already, we're using Vampire the Masquerade's 20th Anniversary Edition with a modified character creation, which will just be discussed during session 0, which is going to be included all above, which is going to have those basically lines and veils that I mentioned earlier on. Don't be a cunt sort of thing, and unless anybody specifically asks to fill out consent sheets, I'm just going to let people talk about what they do and don't want in there, because as this is a one-shot, I don't think this is going to cover a huge breadth of material that could traumatize and upset people. But of course, if people want to do that, I'll be more than happy to do that, because quite frankly, I don't have a problem doing that. Unlike a lot of people, it's just I have a preferred way of doing things. But of course, as I said, if other people want to do things a certain way, I'm more than happy to comply with that. I'm generally alright to comply with most scenarios to make people feel comfortable, providing I have a lot of time to work with it, and you don't leave it to the last minute, because that's just unprofessional, and that just suddenly puts a lot of pressure on me that I now have to bend to your will as such, and that's just not on. And you know, I just want to make sure that everybody's happy and I have lots of time to prepare for it, should this happen. So after we've done all of that, we then talk about the actual gear that's required, and I want it to look semi-decent. Like, I want people to have a decent webcam, I want people to have a decent microphone, whether it's like a USB mic or a more fancy microphone that I have set up here. I have a SE Electronics Magneto microphone. It's like a student thing, but it actually sounds really fucking nice. It was 200 quid at the time. It's discontinued, so you can't go and buy this now, unfortunately. I have a Focusrite 2i2 Model 4, I want to say this is. I don't remember the exact one, but it's a Focusrite interface, and it's like lasted me, well, I've replaced it recently, but the actual brand are very good at doing what they do. But it just makes sure that the audio is like high quality, because I'm not accepting anybody who doesn't have a decent microphone. So I'm not allowing like laptop microphones, I'm not allowing people using their phones, which on a more casual setting I couldn't give a fuck. You know, it's a casual setting, it doesn't really matter, but this is a more professional thing. I want people to have like a decent webcam. I prefer it if people had like an actual webcam that you plug in there, because laptop webcams are not fantastic, unfortunately. They're a bit on the cheap side, which is understandable. It's all packaged in there. I also need to make sure that people have a stable internet connection, so things don't drop out frequently, because that makes things for me much more difficult later on when I'm going to edit everything in. And with Discord, if somebody drops out, the whole monitor display is like swapped about, and as I'll get onto later, there's a very particular way that I'm editing this together, and that's just going to make things really fucking frustrating for me, trying to sort all of that out. So making sure that we have a stable internet connection, nobody's going to dip in and out, is going to be fantastic. And I'm also wanting to make sure that people have a stable, quiet environment with minimal noise from TVs, pets and whatnot, whatnot. Again, in a casual setting this would be fine because this is just a group of people just playing a nerdy game together. But as I'm trying to make things semi-professional, I want things to sound as best that I can. So having like stuff going on in the TV is probably going to get me copyright strikes on YouTube because it's picking up audio that doesn't not belong to me, so I'm technically pirating it, which I don't particularly want, and I don't want people's like snotty kids coming in screaming at mama and dada to sort their fucking owie out or something. A bit callous, I know, but again, in a more casual setting it wouldn't matter too much. I don't want that stuff going on YouTube, and I don't really want to have to deal with the weirdness of anybody's kids like just piping through on YouTube, because then we get on some very dicey ground indeed. And as I said, I don't want that. So it just makes things less easy for me if all things are just a lot more quiet and professional, and just when I'm doing like putting music in or whatever, which I can hopefully get away without getting copyrighted on YouTube, that should all go tickety-boo and everything's just nice and professional. I'm hoping this is going to be the best actual plaything that I've done, which is relevant because I actually want this to be like the last fucking one that I do for a while, besides the solo stuff that I want to do. Then we get on to the actual filling out the form itself, and we've got the basic stuff like what's your username, how do you want to be addressed publicly, because they're going to be very two different things potentially. And then we've got those pronouns, so if that thing that bothers you and you're still here, you're really fucking stupid, a lot more than I thought you were. But I've got a whole list here like he, him, she, her, they, them, he, them, she, them, none, prefer not to say, and then you've got a whole thing that just says other, so people can put in their specific neo-pronouns if that applies to them, or if there's any that I've missed out, which is quite likely because there are a lot of them, and I want to give people the safe space to express themselves how they want to express themselves, so I don't, you know, make them feel upset that way. You know, it's really fucking simple stuff. I don't know why people get annoyed at this, but whatever. Then I ask for the equipment that they have with the webcam and the microphone, which is basically just to give me an idea about the quality of the audio that they're putting out. And then it's just all the confirmation questions of will you be able to play in a quiet environment? Do you have a stable internet connection? And then the attending on the different time zones for the actual play dates that I've actually mentioned here, as I've mentioned before. And yeah, that's basically it really. Once I've decided on what the days are going to be, I'm going to update them probably in the next little cut of this vlog and just talk a bit more about that. But the real thing that I need to try and work out now is actually getting OBS to work with Discord. And OBS is like a software, free, open source that if you've watched any YouTube video that's like recorded with like game audio, whatever, it's basically what it is. It's what people use to get their stuff from Discord or Zoom or Skype calls to Discord or YouTube to allow them to stream, or video games or whatever it is that you watch people streaming. I just do it for recording videos, like I've got the webcam pointing at me and I just record myself. You've got Doris here with her many colourful hats, and just trying to get that to work with Discord so I can like capture all of that with the audio as much as I can so I can edit things as smoothly as possible, because I've had some issues with that recently where I've experienced a lot of stuttering. And getting OBS to work with basically anything is a fucking nightmare. But with Discord at the moment, it's been a bit of a pain. Now, I'm not going to document how I managed to get that all working properly, because that's all very technical and boring. But once I've managed to work out doing this and I have a date for you, we're going to be talking a bit more about me actually setting up the game in question. Unless, of course, something interesting happens that I can just slot in right about now. We have reached that point in the vlog where members of the Lore by Night Discord server are filling out that cast calling form. I did it it was a month before the game, so like the 18th, 20th of September. Because the game's going to be on the 19th, I believe. I've got it in a calendar somewhere. It gives them a month basically to work out their calendars and see if they're available or whatnot, rather than just sprinting it forth like a week of two notice, just to try and optimise a bit more who is and who isn't available for this. And so far, with 956 members of the Lore by Night Discord server, as of the recording of this, 10 people have signed up. Now, it's one thing to wanting to play a game with your favourite content creator, your Lore Saviour, but it's another thing entirely to be part of an actual play and be recorded and such. That being said, I had hoped that more than 10 people would have signed up at this point, but you know what? Rather 10 than none, I suppose. It's also good that the people who have signed up are taking this seriously, that they've answered the questions properly, they've given me, for the most part, the sort of microphones and webcams that they're using. They seem to be following instructions, and, well, I'm hoping they're being honest about it, because it's been real fucking awkward when they turn up and we chastise them because they're being fucking liars, and I won't tolerate that. That's a shitty behaviour that I won't have on the Lore Brand. I try to be as honest as possible. Anywho, I'm sort of getting myself sidetracked a bit here. Now, I've also prepared one of those like community stage things on the Lore Night Discord server, so when the day comes, we can just hopefully do the thing, audience members can appear, and I can just record the game here and not have to worry about, well, any other technical difficulties. I've sorted out my Discord issue with OBS, which is nice, so hopefully that won't be too taxing on my system. It shouldn't be, to be honest, but you never know. Also, audio and tech stuff related could go fucking shitting up the wall on the day. I really hope that doesn't. I'm not putting too much energy out into there. Yeah, when it comes to the end of this week, I'll close off people to sign off, and then I'll put their names in the random spinny wheel thing and announce the winners. I'll give them a little roll so I fucking remember who they are. It's just a very easy way of like, okay, all people of this particular role, you're now welcome access to this bit here where I can drop my little handout for them and we can discuss character creation session 0 shit. Yeah, it's all coming together now and I feel rather excited to get the fucking cunt off the ground a bit more. Just, yeah, bring on fucking October. 10 applicants became 13, 1-3, which to some is an unlucky number, but to me that's just 3 more people that are intrigued of doing an actual play with your Lore Saviour here as your games master, storyteller, whatever you want to call it, whatever floats your goat. Now there's a lot of buzz and excitement, or at least there was more so when you know, the applicants were revealed, both the players and those, you know, who the friends of those and so on and so forth. Basically, there was some energy within the server. And session 0 is in a couple of days now, as of the recording of this. And I'm both excited and nervous, you know, because it's been a while since I've done something like this. And honestly, I just know there's going to be a lot of work that's coming up with this. And there's also some people who clearly didn't read my form properly, and I believe I was very clear with everything about how I wanted things to be done. But I had people ask me, okay, what sort of things do you want for character creation? Like, can I do this? Can I do that? It's like, no, we're all doing it together for character creation. I haven't told them about my altered form of character creation just yet. But I have made it very clear that we're doing character creation together, so we can all work out how we all came about as a pack, or gang, or whatever you want to call your anarch coterie. And there's also been a couple of people who've had like these really convoluted ideas, and one person who's insistent, like, oh, here's this character made from a completely different game, I'm going to use that instead. And it's like, no, because now what we're having here is players that, rather than us all working together and thinking, okay, this is the world and the setting, which is, you know, post Bloodlines by a few days or so. How can I make this character work with the world and everybody else, and how can we all gel together? It's now become, okay, make your world work with my character. Which is, I don't like that particular flip on things. And, you know, if this was a longer thing and it was a bit more general, then I'd be a little bit more open to these ideas, so we can develop those characters' ideas a bit more. However, that's not what this is, and I also don't think there's anything wrong with a games master going, this is the sort of thing that I'm doing, I'd advise you to make characters using these particular stats or builds or whatever. I mean, for example, like for Call of Cthulhu, like if you don't make a character a certain way for a particular type of adventure, you're not going to have a good time, you're going to be failing a lot. I like to put in a really simple thing, which I think is pretty universal. If the games master said, I recommend you having some dots in drive or vehicles or whatever that particular game stat version that is, and nobody puts in that and there's a big old car chase sequence, you're not going to have a good time. You're probably going to fail pretty badly. And I reckon there are some people within this TTRPG sphere who will then twist and turn that, and that being the games master's fault for making things too unfair for them. So yeah, it's a big old collaborative process for sure, but I do also think it's important for players to not be so rigid about their ideas and you know, to make their characters fit within the world that the games master has presented. And regarding the convoluted idea thing for backstory, again, this is sort of like tying into that a bit more, because this is a one-shot and I've made it quite clear that you're anarchs, fledglings / neonates, you don't actually have a lot going on, and as this is a one-shot, we're not going to be able to explore the full breadth of your character concept. So keeping things simple, stupid, is the best way to go with this, I feel. and people are putting far too much thought into this. There was one person who fairly recently, as of the recording of this, saw that I was posting some stuff about making Wraith the Oblivion characters. I'm not telling you what that's for a separate project, but they now seem to have it in their mind that I'm doing something Wraith related, which, given the fact that it's to do with the Giovanni, is not totally far off, but that's not the main focus of this. And despite me saying this, that thing, what you saw has nothing to do with this, they're still suspicious. So great. So I feel they're now going to come into this thinking, oh, I'm going to make a character that has experiences with ghosts and the occult or whatever, which most circumstances would be fine, but in the context of that coming about is just a bit silly, I think. And coming into this not trusting the games master is also a bit worrisome. So I'm putting a big old yellow flag on top of that individual, and if you're watching this, sorry, but I'm just going to be honest here. And again, I do want to reiterate that I think it's important that everybody works together and collaborate on the generation of your world and your setting. Even if the game master / players wants to run / experience a pre-written adventure, if we're talking about vampire, say The Sacrifice from V5 Chicago by Night, it's important that everybody comes together and think, okay, this is the setting, this is what's going on, how can I make everything work together? If you've been watching my campaign diary about this, somebody wanted to be a La Sombra getting used to the Camarilla, and I thought, okay, well, here's an idea that I have. How about we rework The Sacrifice and have you be a La Sombra who's not associated with the Sabbat, that's been raised, groomed, whatever you want to put in there, as Autarchus, who's wanting to get into the Camarilla for safety. And they agreed, and well, you can watch the rest of the campaign diary about that. So yeah, we had these ideas and people did their characters separately, and there was a bit of a conversation about, you know, how they'd all, you know, they come together and their little bit of knowledge that they have with each other, and there was a bit of RP out of that. Some of it I was aware of, some of it I wasn't. Which again, you can watch the campaign diary that I did and see how that all fares. But I do think it's important that people come into this with an open mind, wanting to collaborate with their players, rather than coming in with something so fucking outlandish it's never going to work, or it's just going to make them fucking main character syndrome. Or they come into this with, oh, I'm going to be using X character that I've used in said adventure, or I was going to use this in adventure, or one of the billion concepts I can just pull out the fucking drawers. Like, no, it's important to, I feel, for me, to come up with fresh ideas rather than the storyteller now trying to think, okay, how can I make your weird concept work, and how can I not try and diminish you being the main character, because no one player is important than the other. It's a group effort, and I feel, you know, there should be a big old healthy conversation about that. And if you are doing an actual play, I believe it's very important to have those sorts of conversations. And if you, for whatever reason, want to use like established pre-gens, follow those suggestions, edit things, but have that conversation and, you know, have the conversation about it. Show that you care about your fellow players, the world, the setting, rather than just trying to force the spotlight on you. So yeah, I think that's all very important and something that everyone should be taking into consideration, regardless of the setting that you're doing. Now, of course, it might be a bit different if you're doing like a one-shot convention and the Games Master has presented handouts and pre-gens. That's fine, you know, there's exceptions to every rule. But if you're doing something where you're sitting down with a group of people and it's going to take up some amount of considerable time, and basically, if there's time to prepare for it, have that conversation, like work out how you know everybody or don't know people, like in their connections to everybody. Just, it makes the world feel more vibrant, it will make your game more enjoyable, and also when people are watching your actual play, it will make it a far more engaging and realistic and authentic feeling, and people will love that. And all you just have to do is just prepare to cooperate with each other, which I don't think is very difficult given the fact that TTRPGs are collaborative affairs anyway. So despite all of that, I am really looking forward about going into doing this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun running this. I have my notes, mostly mental, prepared. You might have to look over V20 a bit just to brush up some particular bits of V20 that I'm struggling to remember at the moment. Yeah, we're all ready to go. So it's session 0 time, with the game night in question going to be tomorrow, which is all very exciting and albeit a little nerve-wracking. And as you can see, the players are ready to go in the special private category and channels that I have made. And as you can see, in due course, their asses will be mine. Now, I won't be recording the session 0 for people to watch, because I don't think that's entirely necessary. I know that some people do put out their session 0s, but that's not something that I want to do with this. I don't see much point with it. But regardless, I'm going to be using bits of this as an opportunity to do a bit of sound testing, so once everybody's in, I'll be doing a little bit of sound testing as people like chatting amongst themselves. So I don't want to keep the good people waiting any longer. Let's go in and drop in with a nice friendly message just to show how much I love everybody. Sup, cunts?
Be nice on who you're calling a cunt here.
Everyone, but especially you. So I've just rounded up session 0 and it went really well. It was a bit of a slow start, as I feel that these things always tend to be, because you've got a new group of players who haven't really spoken all that much before in a physical sense, so there's a little bit of awkward shyness, nervousness, whatever. But as it went on and everybody was like chatting away, thinking about their ideas and how they could bounce off other people and how they could know this or that, things really started to come together a lot more, and I'm really happy with this group, and hopefully come the session tomorrow, we'll be able to have lots of fun where one by one I will be killing them off with Giovanni and Lupine. Wahahaha. And I couldn't help myself whilst we were doing that. Like, there were moments of silence where they were just focusing on making their character sheets. I've made a little handout, which is going to be the little business card that they find on their players, and if you watch the actual play, you'll know exactly what that is. And I'm not going to show you, which means you're going to have to go and watch the actual play to find out what exactly that I'm talking about. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun as well. Just deploying my little handout. I have to work out which channel to put that in on the server so that's easily accessible. I actually think there's a little chat thing on the stage. I don't know, I'll work it out. But the main point is that the session 0 went really well. We all know what is and isn't okay. I'll reiterate that on the day. We had a bit of a chat about that, and everyone's really happy with their character concepts and their ideas. Yeah, it's all really cool, and everyone's really excited and buzzing for it. Some of the players had some merits and flaws, some other V20 books, so I'll get to showcase that to you right about now. So my partner is one of the players, and they decided they were going to have the dangerous secret floor from Lore of the Clans in the Nosferatu chapter. Surprise, surprise. Each of the different clans in that book has got their own merits and flaws associated with them, but for the most part you don't have to pair them up with the clans that way. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. I actually did a review of that book some time ago, so go and check that out whilst you can. And they decided, my partner decided, that I should choose what the dangerous secret should be, and I think that's something that we're going to leave for you to watch in the actual play if you haven't done already. And if you have watched it, you probably know what that dark secret would be, that dangerous secret I should say. And then there was one of my other players who, as you know, is a Tremere, and they decided they were going to have a ritual, not one found within the core book, and they chose blood into water, which essentially makes them reverse Jesus Christ. Lovely stuff. I haven't used this book in a very long time regarding vampire play, and it's nice that somebody made me dig out this very gorgeous tome indeed. I haven't reviewed this yet actually, but I did use this a lot on my episode regarding thaumaturgy and blood sorcery, so go and check that out whilst you can. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what this private eye detective Tremere is going to be doing with that. So yeah, lots of fun stuff, I'm sure. So whilst I'm here, let's just remind ourselves once more of the different source books that we're going to be using for this actual play. For all things Los Angeles related, we're going to be referring to LA by Night from Cities of Darkness Volume 2, and have lots of fun with those maps and any interesting characters that may come along the way, and of course Smiling Jack should he decide to come along and save the players from the Lupines. For all things Anarchs related within the revived setting, we have The Guide to the Anarchs, which is a very, very useful tome indeed. And of course, and certainly last, and certainly not least, we have Vampire the Masquerade, 20th Anniversary Edition, which will have the lore, the rules, and all the bits and pieces that I will need in order to run the game, including combat, which is actually how the session is going to be starting out. And anybody who has watched any of my actual plays, or been a player of mine, knows that I tend to be a bit loosey-goosey with the rules, looser than your mother in fact. So it'll be rather nice to see how everybody's going to interpret that live in the Lore by Night Discord server in less than 4 hours time, so yeah. Rather nerve-wracking stuff, I have to say, but I am very excited, and I'm very excited to be playing and running V20 again. It's been a very long time since I've run Vampire as a whole, so that's just going to be a lot of fun to do that, especially with my favourite iteration of Vampire the Masquerade. Lovely stuff! So the one-shot was a great success. The players had lots of fun and lots of people turned out. Well, I say lots of people turned out. There was a maximum of 11 people that came to watch the one-shot unfold on the Lore by Night Discord server. Somebody did some really cool fan art actually, which I'm going to show up there right now. It was depicting a very early scene that happened in that. It's really impressive how quickly they did that. It must have it was like no more than 20 minutes. It was just really super fucking awesome what they did there. So thank you very much, Parker, of the Lore by Night Discord server. That was tremendous work. However, I do have to end this on the rather sullen note because I'm unable to produce the actual play element of this because for whatever reason, despite all the nights running up to this, OBS and Discord working together, it didn't on the night that I needed it. Sometimes it did during sound testing, other times it didn't, and I couldn't get the two to work together properly, which is super frustrating. Especially with all the work that I put in, like putting together this video and all the effort that I was prepared to put in with the actual session itself. It's such a shame that this has ended on this note and my wanting of celebrating VtM Bloodlines. And come to think about it, this is actually quite the appropriate end given how fucking buggy Bloodlines is. And I have glitchy and buggy software that wouldn't let me do what I wanted to do properly. There we go. There's the fucking silver line on the cloud sort of thing. And you know what? At the end of the day, we all had fun with everybody, which is how I think the TTRPG should be. And yes, people do have a lot of fun with actual plays, but there's like another level of the more seriousness with it, like all the technical issues and music and artwork, which I do enjoy the creative process, but then actually coming around to putting it all together can be very stressful. And it's certainly got me rethinking things about doing more video-based actual plays in the future for the channel, because apparently this isn't as reliable as I thought it was going to be, so I have to go and revisit some things, unfortunately. But they can be a lot of fun, and I do also know that a lot of people take actual plays very seriously, which is something that I don't think I could ever do, which is why I don't do them frequently. I think to a degree that some people take them far too seriously, but that is a conversation for another time. I have shown you one of many possible ways of attempting to do actual plays. There's podcast forms, there's all the stuff just using OBS, and then you can apply different scenes, which are like different panels and whatnot, so you click and it transitions from one scene to another, so a scene could be like the introductory bit or a video or sponsors or whatnot. Another scene would be like all the different overlays of people's different videos appearing and all that stuff. And I attempted to show you one way of like doing videos on demand, and I was gonna, record things in Discord, edit, upload it, take the different camera displays and move them around on my editing software, Pro Vegas, put it against the Bloodlines background, put some symbols and whatnot there, and export and upload that, and also apply Bloodlines music and sound effects to all of that to make that stand out. And of course you have been listening to Bloodlines music throughout all of this, so it's not all a total loss here. And one thing that I was going to do with the actual play is showcase the players' character sheets in the form of Bloodlines, which will make sense in just a moment, because I'm actually going to end this video by showing off all of those different things for you. So stick around to them. I hope that despite shortcomings of the actual play project, that this has been an informative and enjoying video. I haven't done something like this before. I attempted it once before, but for reasons that didn't go anywhere. So if you've got any questions about running games in general, whether it's be for more personal things or for TTRPG actual plays, do let me know in the comments below. If you want to see me do more general things like this as well, do let me know, because I do enjoy making these. And going forward into the future, I do want to do more general things and just slowly move away from doing lore content for reasons I will explore at another time, or previously, depending on what I will say when I'm recording my 5th year anniversary episode, because I haven't done that as of the recording of this. So if I have done, that's going to appear in a card somewhere now. So, if you like what I've done, consider liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel. Check out the various links in the description below. You'll find a whole sort of Vampire the Masquerade books that you can purchase for your own TTRPG games, personal actual play, and beyond. You purchase them with those links, I get some of the money back because I'm an affiliate on DriveThruRPG and the Storyteller's Vault, and I can get just a sliver of the pie for, you know, purchasing other books and whatnot. So that goes a little way towards that. Not much, but I appreciate it all the same. So yeah, check out the various Lore by Night social media pages and join the Lore by Night Discord server. We've got a wonderful and wholesome community there, and I absolutely adore all of them. And I will see you next time on the next upload, whatever that may well be for you. And until next time, farewell.